Good morning and welcome to another session of Ripped, brought to you by Totalsports in partnership with the Sports Science Institute of South Africa. My name is Rodet Yila and you'll be with me for the next 45 minutes where we'll be going through a functional based strength circuit. We'll have a couple of exercises where there will be modifications if you are fairly new to strength training. So if you do have any previous existing injuries or any shoulder, lower back or knee niggles, please make sure that you follow the instructions given to you by your physiotherapist or biokineticist. There's no need to try and push through the exercise if it is going to cause further damage or pain. I hope that you guys are feeling positive and upbeat on this Monday morning. It's the start of the week, the start of a new month and the start of level 3. So let's get through this next 45 minutes and make sure that you have a good start to your week. So to start off, we'll be going into a warm-up where we'll be doing some jogging or skipping. If you don't have skipping ropes, you can just hop around on the spots. I'll show you how. And if you want to jog around the house, please do so. Make sure that you don't stray too far from the camera, otherwise you won't hear when we need to resume with the next part of the warm-up. So starting off with skipping, like I said, I don't have skipping ropes with me, so I'll pretend that I'm holding them while I'm hopping on the spot. You can move your hands to help with the rhythm and coordination. And we'll just go through some skipping to warm the body up. So if you are doing this live, you've probably just rolled out of bed. You need to just make sure that you have warmed up the body. You'll start getting some movement through the joints while increasing your heart rate, your breathing rate, and your blood pressure. All of that will get us ready for the next 45 minutes. Alright, and then from there, we'll relax, we'll start going into some jogging on the spot. So you can start off nice and easy, just pumping the legs while moving the arms. And we'll start lifting up at the back, so start doing some butt kicks. And then up at the front, so high knees. Good, and you can relax. Continuing with the warm-up, we'll move into dynamic stretches. So start off with some chest openers. We'll move opposite hands in diagonal patterns, and we'll go for 5 per side. As you're doing this, you're trying to pinch your shoulder blades together at the back. So you actually are using your back muscles. It's not just pulling your hands apart. Good. And then from there, we'll go into leg swings. So if you want, you can hold onto the wall to help with balance. But if you are able to balance on one leg, you'll stand on one leg while moving the other leg as far forward and backwards as possible. You can use your arms to help with counterbalance. And this one will be 10 per side. Good stuff. Moving into the next bit, what we'll do is follow a couple of movements, so it will be more mobility flows. Starting off, we're going to lean against the wall. If you don't have a wall behind you, then you can use a couch, provided that it is at least hip height, because you need to make contact with your glutes. So your bum needs to move backwards to touch the couch. That is just going to give you an indication of how far back you're moving. So if we were to stand directly up against the wall, I'm going to take one step forward. So it's just basically your foot distance away. And then from here, standing with your feet shoulder width apart, my thumbs are pointing forward with my arms in front of my thighs, and I'm going to push my hips backwards as I lean forward, keeping contact with my hands onto my shins. From here, my hands will point out to the sides, so it's diagonal, and what I'll do is I'll lift my arms as high as possible, lock my shoulders there, and then stand up. So ideally, you would have touched the wall with your hips, and that will create your hip hinge movement. So it's moving your hips backwards rather than just bending your knees while you sink down. So the idea is to push your hips backwards, you'll touch the wall, and then that is how you know if you've moved your hips far back enough. So once again, getting into your position, thighs down to your shins, touch the wall, lift your hands, and then you hinge forward. So that will be called the Y-up, and we'll do 5 of those. You'll feel that the hamstrings feel a little bit of tension, and as you move your hips forward, just make sure that you are squeezing your glutes to push your hips. Right, then from there, we'll go into frog squats. So for the frog squat, the idea is to sit down as deep as possible while maintaining an upright chest. So you're actually pinning the shoulder blades backwards, sitting down while you keep your chest pointed forward rather than allowing it to drop slightly downwards like you would in a normal squat. So to show you from the side, I'll go into this position. What you want to do is sit with your shoulders back and your hips moving downwards. Your hands will reach down to your feet if you are able to, and if you can, then you push your elbows out to open up the hips a little bit more. So the elbows are pushing onto the knees. You'll see that the back is nice and straight, my chest is looking forward, and then from there, I'll stand up. So a view from the front, you're ideally sitting down in that position, touching with your feet, opening up the hips, and standing up. If you aren't able to reach down into the very bottom position, that's not a problem. What you'll do then is you reach down as deep as possible without compromising your form, so you don't want to start arching your back or lifting the heels. You'll get down to that bottom position, place your hands on your knees, open your hips, and stand from there. So it's over time that you will progressively improve on your squat depth, but you don't want to rush it and get down to the bottom when you haven't performed the movement correctly. So we'll perform 5 frog squats. I'll stand diagonally so that you can see a little bit of both directions. It's down as deep as you can, you get to the bottom, and then from there you're standing up, always pushing through your heels. You'll notice that my toes are pointed slightly outwards. You are allowed to squat in that manner, provided that your knees follow the same line as your toes. So if my toes were pointing forward, my knees would have to follow forward. If my toes are pointed slightly outwards, my knees follow slightly outwards. Once you've finished 5 of these, we'll go into the next movement. Right, moving on. We'll go into a movement complex that will involve a knee hug that goes into a lunge, and then from that lunge position, we'll rotate our chest, so it will be trunk rotation. I'll stand this way so that you can see all 3 movements nicely. I'll start off hugging my right knee, the right leg goes forward. I can lift my hands, pushing my hips forward by squeezing the glutes. You're not trying to lean backwards to arch the back. And then from there, I'll rotate as far as I can, opening up at the chest, and then getting back into my starting position. So the idea is not to get down onto the ground. If you do need to rest your knee on the ground, that's fine, but ideally you're holding the position just off of the ground. So it's the knee hug into the lunge, and then you rotate at the chest. It's not just about pulling the hand back. You'll need to perform 5 per side. I'm on my last one on each side. Good. Then moving on to our final mobility flow. So it's also an activation exercise for one of the movements we'll be performing later on in the session. What we'll do is we'll get down into a push-up position and your feet will be shoulder width apart. So you place your feet shoulder width apart so that you have a little bit of balance. When you go down into the push-up, keep your elbows relatively close to your torso. You don't want to flare your elbows out to the sides. So you want to make sure that it's relatively close to your torso. Down for the push-up, into toe touch on the other side. So it's right hand, left foot, left hand, right foot. And you'll need to perform 5 of these. So after the push-up, you perform a toe touch on each side and you do 5 of those. Try to push your hips up as high as possible when you go for the toe touch. Alright, so that's the warm-up done and dusted. What we'll do now is have a quick drink of water if you need, and then we'll go through your primary lifts. So for the first section, which is referred to as our primary lifts, we'll be performing the most complex movement. Ideally, this is the heaviest loading that we'll do. So I'll be using a weighted backpack. And if you have dumbbells or kettlebells at home, please feel free to use those, provided that they are challenging enough. You also want to make sure that they're not too heavy, otherwise you won't be able to control the movement or perform the movement with proper technique. So for this section, we've got 3 exercises. I'll be demonstrating 1 set of each at a time, and then we'll continue following through for the remaining sets. So you'll obviously be working at your own time, but if you do struggle and you need a little bit more help, please feel free to hang behind and wait for me to get through the movement. So the first exercise will be an upright sumo squat with a press. So I'll keep this bag in my hands. What you need to focus on is firstly the positioning of your feet. So we'll go into a sumo squat position, which is essentially feet pointed slightly outwards. With that, your knees must follow the straight line provided by your toes. So I don't want your toes pointing outwards, but then your knees are falling inside to go straight in front of you. So they must follow the straight line of your toe. That's the safest joint line for your knee. Then what you'll do is, once again, keep our chest open by putting our shoulder blades backwards, sitting down into an imaginary chair behind us, and that will be the upright squat. So we're not looking to deadlift by using our hip hinge. We actually want our knee hinge to assist the squat. You'll think of the same movement that we did with the frog squats. While we're standing up, we are pressing the bag. So the bag starts off at the bottom. What you can do is you can use your elbows as a guide to see if your knees are falling inside, because if you get down to the bottom and your elbows start touching your knees, you know your knees are dropping towards the insides. So ideally, your elbows and knees shouldn't touch. So to demonstrate the movement, we've got our feet pointed outwards. You can even assume a slightly wider than shoulder width stance. And from here, it's down to the bottom and then pressing at the top. We'll be performing 10 of those reps, 5 if you struggle with either movement of the squat or you feel that your weight is far too heavy. Ideally, you're looking to get through 10 reps. So starting off, it's down into the press. You can slow down your squat a little bit more so that you can make sure that you've got good form and control through the movement. So that's 9, and that's 10. Right. Then for the next exercise, we'll need either the wall behind us or the couch behind us. Ideally, once again, we're just using the couch or the wall as an indicator to see how far back your hips have moved. and you are ideally pressing the weighted object. So the line of the press will be in front of you, but at a slightly diagonal movement. So it's up there, it's not just in front of you or down to the ground. What you want to do is make sure that our upper back is working, but we do need to protect the lower back. So you'll need to squeeze your glutes to make sure that you do have as much stability at the bottom as possible. So standing in front of our wall again, we'll take a step away, and I know if I move my hips backwards, I should touch the wall at some point. If you're using the couch, please make sure that you don't push the couch away. So with the weighted object in hand, we will start our hip hinge and our press simultaneously. So we'll start moving the hands and your hips at the same time. You'll do 5 repetitions, and then we'll go into our final exercise before we start finishing up our sets. So it's 5 angled presses. Slow movement, trying to lift the object as high as possible. Good, so fairly quick, but it is a challenging movement. So if you feel that that was too easy, because either your weight is too light or because you are relatively familiar with the movement, please feel free to slightly increase the reps. You don't want to go for too many though, so maybe 8 repetitions, 10 repetitions if it's a very, very easy exercise. Then moving into our third exercise, we have a push-up into, we have a quadriceps biased split squat, and there will be a lunge as well as a row as well as the lunge. So when we're doing our split squat, that is essentially placing our feet into our lunge position. So we are moving upwards and downwards with our hips, but we've got our weight leaning forward, and that will make it biased towards your quadriceps. So we're actually loading the front leg a little bit more. It's important to notice that we must stabilize our lower back. You'll squeeze the glutes of the front leg, so that will be my left side, and the bag will be in the right hand side. So I've got opposite sides working together. That will cause a little bit more challenge at your pelvic stabilizers because you don't want your hips rotating around the place like that. Ideally, you keep all of the weight in front. When I move down to the ground, all of the weight is on the front leg. As I move up, I perform the row. So it's 2 movements, we perform 5 per side. All of my weight onto the front leg, it's down for the split squat, into the row. So if you'd like, you can place your hand on your knee for the row, but ideally not for the split squat so that you don't use your hand to assist the leg. We'll go through 5 per side. Moving over to the other side, assume your position once again. So while you're keeping all of your weight on the front foot, just remember that the heel should not lift and your knee should not be sliding all the way forward because your hips should be moving downwards. So it's not shifting your hips forward and rocking backwards and forwards like that. Right, so that is our 3 exercises. We'll go through for another 2 sets each, so that means 2 more rounds of the 3 exercises. If you feel comfortable with those, please go ahead and finish up. If you need a little bit more help, please follow me. I'll be performing some extra cues with the movements just to try and make it a little bit easier to understand. So starting off with our sumo squat with the press, I'll show you from the side to see what it's meant to look like. Hands in front of you, feet pointed outwards and shoulder width apart, and I'll sit down into the press. So we're going for 10 repetitions where you're aiming to push your hips backwards as I sit down. Good, so once you finish with those 10, you'll go into the next one, which is the angled press, going for 5 repetitions. So for the angled press and the hip hinge, I'll once again show you from the side so that you can see what's happening at your hips. Just keep in mind that if my shoulders, hips, and knees start off in one line at the start, you'll notice that it's only the shoulders and the knees in that same line. Your hips will have moved backwards. So starting off over here, you go into your press with hip hinge. Right, and then into the third exercise, which is the quadriceps bias split squat into the row. So once again, all the weight onto the front leg, back supported, and I go downwards into the row. So you'll see that the knee does not slide over the toes, but I'm leaning forward to make sure that that front leg is being loaded a little bit more. When you're performing the row, it's important to make sure that it's an elbow moving up as high as possible, and you are squeezing with your shoulder blades to try to pinch a pencil in between your shoulder blades. Good, so that is all 3 exercises. We've got one more set of each, so please feel free to go through those in your own time. You'll have a water break afterwards. So finishing up with our sumo squats and press. And that's 10. Going into our angled press with the hip hinge. And wrapping up with the quad biased split squat and row. Right, you've got a water break, and then we'll go into our next section. So the next section is referred to as our Metcon, which stands for metabolic conditioning. The idea for this section is to try increase the amount of repetitions while keeping intensity high. So we're going for high frequency, high intensity, but that doesn't mean that we compromise our form or the way that we're actually getting through the exercise. So we're not trying to rush through it, we're not trying to cheat through it. You want to work as hard as possible, but at the same time, keep in mind that you need to perform the movement properly. So we'll have 4 exercises that we're trying to get through. Once again, there'll be 3 sets, so 3 rounds of the 4 exercises, and we'll go through 1 exercise at a time. To keep things nice and simple, I will be demonstrating 1 exercise at a time once again, and then those who feel comfortable can continue because there'll be a little bit of backlog if we start waiting around after each exercise. So your overhead your overhead get up will be performed starting from your knees. So if you want, you can use a mat or a towel to provide some cushioning for the knees. I'll keep my weighted object with me because the weighted object needs to start directly above your head, and you are starting in a tall kneeling position. So that just means that I'm on my knees and I've got my hips forward. I'm not sitting all the way back. So you need to be in that tall kneeling position. What you'll do from then is step forward with one leg at a time, standing all the way back, standing all the way up, and then getting back down by one leg at a time. So to demonstrate, we've got our bag directly over our head, starting off in tall kneeling position. It's one leg to get up, follow with the same leg to get down. So you'll be performing 3 per leg. So that means my right leg leads for 3, and then my left leg leads for 3. Everyone ready? Hands up, and let's get up and down for 3. So remember that it is meant to be a high intensity. So we're getting through these movements relatively quickly, but with control. And that's 3. Good. Then from there, we'll go into skater lunges, where we're jumping from side to side. Ideally, the hand touches the ground. So if I'm jumping from this side, I'm going as far as I can to that side. Please make sure you're not jumping on a slippery surface, or if you are jumping across the mat, you don't land on the mat and slide with the mat. So I'll be jumping just behind the mat, and when I jump across, you must land, other foot touches for balance, and then the hand touches as well, just to make sure that you are stabilizing the knee. What you don't want to do is try jump before you've stabilized the knee, and if you do feel like you're slipping, please stop the movement rather than rushing through and hurting either your hand or your foot. So from here, it's out to the side, touch at the back, and we'll go for 3 per side like that. All right, everyone ready? And let's go. That's 3 per side. Good. Next up, we'll go into tiger set-outs, where we are essentially standing from a quadrupled position, and it will be from hands and knees with your knees up. So it's just hands and toes, and we stand up into that position, so it's more of a rotation. Kicking up with your hips, lifting as high as possible. So you ideally squeeze your glutes to lift your hips, and you need to move through for 3 per side. All right, so ready, and let's go. So you'll see it's opposite sides together. And that's 3 per side. Then finishing up, we've got a push-up with a thread the needle. The needle will be your leg, so ideally you're pushing your leg through the gap between your arm and other foot. So if you can, you rotate your hips a little bit, but you must maintain balance. So from this position, I'm doing my push-up as I push my leg through, and it's the hips that are rotating to help get that leg through. You need to perform 3 per side. Good. So that is 1 set of all 4 exercises. We need to perform another 2 sets. Have a quick water break if you need, and then let's get into the next one. So if you're ready, we'll start together. So it's another 3 per leg. Moving into the skater lunges. It's 3 per side. Then our tiger sit-outs. And lastly, the push-up with the thread the needle. All right, 2 down, 1 to go. Quick water break again, and then we'll wrap up. So wrapping up the Metcon, going through our third set. Next up we have the skater lunges. That goes into the tiger sit-outs. So if you are dropping a little bit behind, don't worry, you will have time to catch up at the water break. And lastly, the push-up with the thread the needle. So if you were wondering what the version would be if you were doing the modified version, all you need to do is uncross your legs and make sure that we lift one side as we go down. Good. We've got a quick water break and then we'll wrap up with our finisher. So the finisher will involve 2 movements. The idea will be to do a countdown of 5 repetitions into 4 repetitions, 3, 2, and then 1. You are performing 5 repetitions of each movement and then moving down, so on. So the 5 repetitions into the 4, 3, and then 2 and 1 will be per side because we're actually moving in both right and left directions. So the first exercise is diagonal knee tucks, where we start off in your high plank position or the top of your push-up with your feet together, and then we move our feet to the sides so that it's got a V pattern. The idea will be to move in the V pattern continuously, counting only on the right side or on the left side. So we don't count each hop, but we count each time you complete the V. So that will be 5 per side. The movement that you're doing with that will be the Fury Superman if you are able to. So starting off on hands and knees, our hands shoulder width apart directly underneath our shoulders, knees hip width apart directly underneath the hips. From here you slightly push your chest away so that it's not slumping like that, so our chest is pushed away from the ground. We've got our toes down and we lift the knees off of the ground. Ideally from this position we are moving opposite hands together, slowly changing, and as you push your hands forward, your heel must move backwards. Once again, that is counting per side, so it's either counting the right hand or the left hand going forward. You will not be able to perform this movement by moving the right hand and the right foot at the same time. it's opposite side. So it's right hand, left foot, left hand, right foot. So for those of you who are ready, 5 per side into 4 per sides. Starting off with the diagonal knee tucks. 3, 2, 1, and let's go. So that's 1. That's 2, 3, 4, and 5. Into our fury position. So if you aren't able to do the fury position, you'll keep your knees down and you'll just perform the normal Supermans. Starting off with the fury, so it's up into a slow change over. Good, so that's our 5s. Let's move into the 4s. That's 1, that's 2, that's 3, and that's 4. So for those of you wondering, the normal Superman version without the fury plank would be on hands and knees, moving like this. Right, moving into our 3s. Starting to get a little bit less and less movement, but we are getting more and more fatigued. 1, 2, and 3. Keep going, you're almost there. Into the 2s. The last one, 1 per side, and then we're done. Alright, well done. You can grab your sweat towel, water bottle. So that is the rip session for this morning. What we'll do now is a quick stretch and then we'll wrap it up. So you can stay flat on your back. Keep your water bottle nearby if you'd like to continue drinking. We'll hold behind one leg and try straighten the leg while we point our toes towards our chest. Ideally, you are relaxing your neck and you just remain flat and relaxed. From there, drop the leg across the body. Keep your shoulders flat while you look towards the opposite side. You can hold the knee down with the other hand. From there, we'll go into the figure of 4 position. So we just bend the bottom leg and you can hug whichever knee you prefer. In this position, you can also push the knee out to the side so that you can feel the glutes a little bit more. Moving over to the other leg. So starting off, holding the back of the leg, straighten the knee, point your toes towards your chest, and relax your neck. Dropping the leg across the body, shoulders flat and look the other way. Going into the figure 4 stretch. Once again, hugging whichever knee you prefer. And then from here, we will turn over onto our stomach. Push your chest away from the ground as you push your feet away from your body. Try to relax the hips and drop them low. And if you can, relax your shoulders as well. From here, we will go onto the toes. Lift the hips up as we walk our hands all the way up towards our feet. And that is that. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Like I said, it's a 45-minute session, quick way to start your day. And for those of you who are new to this, please make sure you join us, tell your friends. We'll be here at the same time, same place next week. And I hope you guys enjoy the start of this month. Cheers.